The day the Draconian ships appeared in Earth's sky started like any other. People went to work, children attended school, and life continued in its normal rhythm. No one knew that by sunset, everything would change forever. Commander Alan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station and stared at his monitor in disbelief. The alarm had sounded just minutes ago, alerting them to objects entering the solar system. Not just a few objects, hundreds of them. "Sir, we're counting over 300 vessels larger than anything we've ever built," said Diane Foster, her fingers moving quickly across her console. "They're slowing as they approach Mars orbit." Alan rubbed his tired eyes. At 45, he had spent 20 years in Earth's defense forces, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Have they responded to our hails?" "No, sir, nothing but silence." The massive ships moved with purpose, their obsidian hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They looked like spears thrown across space, pointed directly at Earth. "Get me Central Command," Alan ordered. His mouth felt dry. Within minutes, screens around the world lit up with emergency broadcasts. World leaders called for calm as the alien fleet positioned itself in Earth orbit. Military forces worldwide went on high alert. In a secret underground facility in Nevada, scientist George Barnes watched the satellite feeds with growing horror. The 50-year-old researcher had spent his career preparing for this moment, but seeing those ships made his life's work suddenly seem inadequate. "They match the descriptions from the Centauri encounters," said Linda Cooper, the military strategist, assigned to the facility. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, her expression grim. "The Draconians, the Centauri warned us about them." George nodded slowly. 10 years ago, humanity had made contact with its first alien species, the peaceful Centauri. They had shared knowledge and warned about the galaxy's predators. The Draconians were conquerors who had destroyed dozens of civilizations. "Is Project Whisper ready?" Linda asked. "Ready? No. Functional? Maybe." George turned to his computer and began typing rapidly. "We need Kevin. Right? He left the program years ago. He's the only one who truly understands the quantum principles behind the project." George reached for his secure phone. "And we're going to need every advantage we can get." The first message from the Draconians came 23 hours after their arrival. It broadcast on all frequencies in perfect English. "People of Earth, we are the Draconian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. You have 48 hours to surrender your governments to our authority. Resistance will result in planetary bombardment. This is not negotiable." The message repeated in every human language. Panic spread across the globe. Some cities erupted in chaos, while others fell into eerie silence as people huddled in their homes, watching the dark ships through windows or on their screens. In Washington, President Susan Clark convened an emergency meeting with military leaders and scientists. "What options do we have?" she asked, her voice steady despite the situation. General Pete Johnson shook his head. "Our conventional weapons would be like throwing rocks at a tank. We've analyzed their hull material. Even nuclear strikes might not penetrate." "And if we surrender?" "The Centauri records suggest they typically strip planets of resources. The native populations are either eliminated or enslaved," said Dr. Mary Wilson, the government's chief xenobiologist. President Clark closed her eyes briefly. "Then we fight. What about this Project Whisper I've been briefed on?" Dr. Wilson shifted uncomfortably. "It's experimental technology based on quantum displacement theory. In theory, it could remove the threat. But it's never been tested at scale. Get it ready," the president ordered. "We have less than 2 days." Kevin Wright lived alone in a cabin near Lake Superior. At 60, his beard was gray and his movements slower than in his youth, but his mind remained sharp. When his secure phone rang for the first time in 5 years, he knew before answering that the day he had feared had arrived. "Kevin, it's George. They're here." Kevin looked out his window at the peaceful lake. "The Draconians?" "Yes. We need you at the facility. Project Whisper is our only hope." Kevin had walked away from the project when he realized how his theoretical work on quantum displacement could be weaponized. The equations he had developed were meant to revolutionize space travel, not become a weapon of mass destruction. "I swore I'd never work on that project again," he said quietly. "If you don't, there might not be a human race left to make promises." "Two," George replied. 6 hours later, a military transport delivered Kevin to the Nevada facility. Armed guards escorted him through layers of security until he reached the central lab where George waited. "You continued the work," Kevin said, looking at the equations covering the whiteboards. "We had to." George handed him a tablet. "The resonator network is installed. 37 stations worldwide, just as you designed. But the targeting system isn't stable." Kevin reviewed the data, his expression darkening. "You've weaponized a technology that could tear the fabric of space-time. Do you understand what you're messing with?" "Better than most," George countered, "and I understand what happens if we do nothing." Above them, Captain Kelly Martinez watched from an observation room. Her brother Jack served on the USS Defender, one of the few human ships that had survived the initial Draconian approach. The aliens had destroyed 3 military satellites and a research station as a demonstration of power. "How long before it's ready?" she asked over the intercom. George looked up. "With Kevin's help? 40 hours, maybe less." "The deadline is 48 hours, Kelly reminded him. "Then we'd better work fast," Kevin said, already making corrections to an equation. As the scientists worked, the world waited. Families gathered close. Some prayed. Others prepared for the worst. In space, the Draconian ships maintained their positions, a silent threat hanging over humanity. 39 hours into the deadline, the first test of the quantum resonators failed. Kevin and George argued bitterly over the calibrations. "The problem isn't the math," Kevin insisted. "It's the synchronization. The resonators need to fire in perfect harmony or the displacement field will collapse. We don't have time to reprogram each station individually," George protested. Linda, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. "What if we use the global satellite network as a relay? One signal perfectly timed." Kevin and George exchanged looks. It might work. As the deadline approached, President Clark received hourly updates. World leaders had unified in defiance of the Draconian ultimatum. If humanity was to fall, it would fall together. In the Nevada facility, Kevin made the final adjustments to the resonator control program. His hands trembled slightly as he typed the last command. "It's ready," he announced. "As ready as it will ever be." George placed his hand on his old friend's shoulder. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this." Above them, Captain Martinez received word that the Draconian ships were changing formation. The deadline was approaching. "They're preparing to attack," she informed the scientists. President Clark gave the authorization from Washington. Project Whisper would activate in 1 hour, just as the Draconian deadline expired. As the countdown began, humanity held its breath, unaware that they were about to unleash a force that would change their place in the universe forever. The Draconian deadline expired with a terrible silence. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. People around the world looked up at the sky, waiting. Then the attacks began. Sydney, Australia, was the first target. A beam of intense green light shot down from one of the largest Draconian ships. Buildings crumbled. The famous opera house collapsed in seconds. Thousands died in the first minute. Shanghai was next, then Cairo. The pattern became clear. The aliens were systematically targeting Earth's largest cities. In the Nevada facility, alarms blared as reports flooded in. Director Paul Evans rushed into the control room, his face pale with shock. "They're hitting population centers first," he announced. "The president says we can't wait any longer. Activate Project Whisper now." Kevin Wright looked up from his console. His hands shook slightly as he entered his authorization code. "George, are you absolutely certain about this?" he asked his colleague one last time. "Once we start this process, we can't stop it." George Barnes nodded grimly. "We've run out of options, Kevin. If we don't act now, humanity ends today." Linda Cooper monitored the global network of quantum resonators. All 37 stations showed green on her display. Network is ready, she confirmed. Synchronization at 98%, that's the best we'll get. Captain Kelly Martinez received a message on her secure line. Her brother Jack's ship, the USS Defender, was engaging Draconian vessels in Earth orbit. They were heavily outmatched. Do it, she said quietly. Before we lose everyone. Kevin took a deep breath and pressed the final key. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. No explosion, no beam of light, no thunderous sound, just a subtle vibration that ran through the floor beneath their feet. Is it working? Director Evans demanded. The resonators are active, George confirmed, studying his readings. Energy levels are climbing. The quantum field is expanding. Throughout the planet, people felt a strange vibration. It wasn't like an earthquake, it felt deeper somehow, as if reality itself was humming. In Chicago, Janet Morgan huddled in her basement with her 2 children. She had covered the windows with blankets but left one small corner exposed so she could see outside. Through this gap, she watched in horror as 3 Draconian landing craft descended toward the city center. Then something strange happened. The craft suddenly stopped moving. They hung in the air, motionless, as if frozen in time. Janet's 10-year-old son pulled at her sleeve. Mom, what's happening to them? I don't know, Ethan, she whispered, unable to look away. In Earth orbit, Communications Officer Frank Howard aboard the USS Defender could hardly believe what he was seeing. The massive Draconian warship they had been desperately fighting suddenly stopped firing. Its lights flickered. Captain, something's happening to the enemy vessel, he reported. They're experiencing some kind of power fluctuation. Captain Bradley stared at the main screen. Are we doing this? Is this some kind of countermeasure I wasn't briefed on? Unknown, sir, Frank replied. But it's affecting all Draconian ships in our sensor range. The Draconian Admiral Zorthul stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Planet Breaker. In 300 years of conquests across 3 galaxies, he had never known defeat. His scaled skin was dark gray with age, and the red crest on his head marked him as royalty among his kind. Report, he demanded as warning signals flashed across the ship's control panels. A science officer approached, her movements showing clear signs of fear. Hi, Commander. We are detecting quantum instabilities throughout the fleet. The humans have deployed some kind of field technology we've never encountered before. Impossible, Zorthul hissed. These primitives barely have space travel. They cannot possess technology that affects us at a quantum level. Another officer called out in alarm. Sir, hull integrity is compromising at a molecular level. Zorthul moved to the observation window. He could see other ships in his fleet now showing visible signs of distress. Some had strange ripples moving across their hulls, as if they were made of liquid rather than solid metal. For the first time in his long life, Admiral Zorthul felt fear. Back in Nevada, Kevin watched the readings with growing alarm. The displacement field is stronger than we calculated. It's not just disrupting their systems, it's affecting the actual matter of their ships. Isn't that what we wanted? Linda asked, confused. No, Kevin said quietly. We wanted to disable them, maybe force them back into space. This is... He gestured at the screen displaying quantum readings. This is something else entirely. George studied the data flowing across his screen. The effect is cascading through their fleet. The quantum disruption from each affected ship is amplifying the field's strength. In Washington, President Clark received the first hopeful reports since the invasion began. The Draconian attack had stopped. In cities worldwide, the alien ships had ceased firing and appeared to be experiencing some kind of mechanical failure. What exactly is Project Whisper doing to them? She asked her advisors. We're not entirely sure, Madam President, replied the Secretary of Defense. The scientists described it as a quantum displacement field. It was supposed to disrupt their technology, but reports suggest something more significant is happening. In orbit, Frank Howard watched in awe as the Draconian flagship began to change before his eyes. It seemed to shimmer like a mirage in the desert. "Captain, I don't know how to describe this," he said. "The enemy vessel appears to be dissolving." They knew. Effects started at the edges of the massive ship. Pieces of the hull seemed to turn to dust, but instead of floating away in the vacuum of space, the particles simply vanished. It was as if chunks of the ship were being erased from existence. The process accelerated rapidly. Within minutes, the enormous flagship was half its original size. Then, in a final shimmer of light, it disappeared completely. All across Earth's orbit, the same phenomenon repeated with every Draconian vessel. One by one, they dissolved into nothingness. In the Nevada facility, alarms blared as the sensors struggled to make sense of what was happening. Kevin stared at the readings in horror. "My God," he whispered. "We haven't destroyed them." "What do you mean?" Director Evans demanded. "They're gone, aren't they?" "Not gone," Kevin said. "Displaced. The quantum field didn't destroy their matter. It shifted it somewhere else. Somewhere outside our dimension." George looked pale. "Where did we send them?" Kevin shook his head slowly. "I don't know. That's what terrifies me." As reports came in from around the world, humanity began to understand what had happened. The Draconian fleet, hundreds of warships carrying thousands of alien invaders, had simply vanished. Cities lay in ruins from the initial attack. Sydney, Shanghai, Cairo, and parts of several other major cities had been devastated. Millions were dead or injured. But the attack had stopped as suddenly as it had begun. President Clark addressed the nation and the world from an underground bunker. "Today, humanity faced extinction at the hands of an alien force," she said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Through courage, unity, and technological innovation, we have survived. The threat has been neutralized. The healing begins now." What she didn't say, what the scientists in Nevada had only just begun to understand, was that Project Whisper had done more than save humanity. It had announced humanity's presence to the wider universe in a way that could never be undone. As night fell across the Nevada desert, Kevin Wright stepped outside the facility and looked up at the stars. For the first time, they seemed threatening rather than beautiful. "What have we done?" he whispered to the empty sky. 3 weeks after the Draconian fleet vanished, the world struggled to return to normal. Cities damaged in the attack began rebuilding. Memorial services were held for the millions who had died. World leaders met to discuss what the alien invasion meant for humanity's future. At the Nevada facility, now called Whisper Base, Kevin Wright and George Barnes worked day and night to understand what had happened. They had been joined by scientists from around the world, all eager to study the EI, technology that had saved Earth. "The quantum readings are still active in Earth orbit," Emma Rodriguez said, pointing to her computer screen. The young physicist had arrived from Argentina a week ago and quickly proven herself valuable to the team. "It's like echoes of what happened." Kevin leaned closer to look at her data. The displacement field tore the fabric between dimensions. Those echoes might be leakage from wherever we sent the Draconians. "Can they come back?" George asked the question everyone feared. Kevin shook his head slowly. "I don't know. This is all new territory. No one has ever done this before." In Washington, President Clark met with the newly formed Global Defense Council. Representatives from every nation sat around a large table, united by their shared experience of near extinction. "Project Whisper saved us," said the representative from China. "We should build more resonators, strengthen the network." "With respect," countered the representative from India, "we don't fully understand this technology. Dr. Wright himself has expressed concerns about the dimensional rifts it created." President Clark listened to the debate with a heavy heart. The weight of her decision to authorize Project Whisper still pressed on her. She had saved humanity, but at what cost? "We need to proceed carefully," she finally said. "Yes, we'll continue developing defensive technologies, but not without understanding the consequences." Captain Kelly Martinez, now promoted to major, had been assigned to lead security at Whisper Base. As she walked the perimeter of the facility, she thought about her brother Jack. The USS Defender had returned to Earth orbit to help clean up the debris left by some of the smaller Draconian ships that had partially broken apart before fully disappearing. Her phone buzzed with a message from him. "You won't believe what we just found." Attached was a photo of a small object recovered from space. It appeared to be a data storage device of some kind, with strange markings that were clearly not human. Kelly immediately took the image to Kevin and George. "It's Draconian," George confirmed after studying it. "Probably fell from one of their ships before the displacement took full effect." "Can we access it?" Kelly asked. "It might contain important information about their species, their technology." Kevin looked uneasy. "It might also contain viruses designed to attack our systems. We need to be careful." Emma suggested a solution. "We could build an isolated computer system, completely disconnected from any network. Use it only to access this device." 2 days later, they had their answer. The Draconian device contained star charts, navigation data, and fragments of communications. Most importantly, it contained information about the Draconians themselves. "They're conquerors," Emma explained during the briefing with President Clark, who attended virtually. "They've destroyed dozens of civilizations across 3 galaxies. Earth was just going to be their next conquest. So we were justified in defending ourselves," the president said. Kevin frowned slightly. "Yes, but there's more. According to this data, the Draconians answer to someone else. They call them the Architects. We don't know who or what they are, but the Draconians clearly fear them." This news sent a chill through the meeting. If the fearsome Draconians were merely servants to some greater power, what did that mean for Earth? Meanwhile, in Chicago, Janet Morgan had become something of a celebrity. Her video of the Draconian landing crafts freezing and then dissolving into nothing had gone viral. She had been interviewed on national television, telling her story of watching humanity's salvation from her basement window. "I still don't understand what happened," she told a reporter. "One minute we were facing extinction and the next minute they were just gone. It felt like a miracle." Her son Ethan had become fascinated with space and aliens since the invasion. He covered his bedroom walls with drawings of the Draconian ships and the heroes who had stopped them. "Do you think they'll come back, Mom?" he asked one night as she tucked him into bed. Janet hesitated. The truth was, no one knew. "I think if they do, we'll be ready for them," she said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. Back at Whisper Base, another discovery shook the scientific team. Emma had been analyzing the quantum echoes in Earth orbit when she noticed something strange. "The echoes are getting stronger in some places," she reported during the morning briefing. "It's like the tears in space-time aren't healing. They're getting worse." Kevin's face darkened. "I was afraid of this. The displacement field was too powerful, too uncontrolled. We didn't just move the Draconians somewhere else. We damaged the barriers between dimensions." "What does that mean for us?" Kelly asked. "It means we might have solved one problem by creating a bigger one," George said grimly. "If these rifts continue to grow, who knows what might come through them?" The team immediately began working on a way to monitor the rifts. They converted several space telescopes to detect the unique quantum signature of the dimensional tiers. What they found was troubling. "There are 5 major rifts," Emma explained, pointing to a map of Earth orbit. "They're stable for now, but they're slowly expanding. And there's something else." She hesitated. "What is it?" Kevin prompted. "There's movement inside them. Something is moving on the other side." The news was classified at the highest level, but rumors began to spread. People looking at the night sky reported seeing strange lights, brief flashes that couldn't be explained by normal astronomical phenomena. In response, the Global Defense Council accelerated the development of Earth's defensive capabilities. The few alien technologies recovered from Draconian debris were studied intensely. The Whisper Resonator network was maintained at full readiness. Frank Howard, now serving as communications chief on Earth's newest space station, was the first to detect the signal. It came through all frequencies simultaneously, a pattern too, regular to be natural, but unlike anything in human communication, it's not Draconian. he reported after comparing it to the data they had recovered. It's something completely different. For 3 days, the best minds on Earth worked to decode the signal. When they finally succeeded, the message was simple, but chilling. The balance is disturbed. The veil is torn. We are coming. Kevin Wright was awakened in the middle of the night and rushed to the base. When he saw the decoded message, his worst fears were confirmed. By defending ourselves against the Draconians, we revealed ourselves to the universe, he said to the emergency meeting. And not just our universe, but whatever exists beyond the dimensional barriers we damaged. What do we do? President Clark asked, her image on the video screen looking tired but determined. Kevin looked around at the faces of his colleagues, George, Emma, Kelly, all waiting for an answer he didn't have. We prepare, he finally said. And we hope that whatever's coming is better than what we just sent away. As dawn broke over Whisper Base, new reports came in from observatories around the world. The rifts in space were growing larger. The quantum echoes were getting stronger. Something was coming through. 2 months after the mysterious message, Earth had transformed. The Global Defense Council converted old missile silos into new Whisper resonator stations. Space agencies worldwide launched satellites equipped with quantum sensors. Every telescope on the planet pointed toward the 5 growing rifts in orbit. At Whisper Base, the team expanded to include hundreds of scientists and military personnel. Kevin Wright rarely left the facility now, sleeping on a cot in his office when exhaustion finally overcame him. The largest rift has doubled in size, Emma reported during the morning briefing. Her once neat appearance had given way to wrinkled clothes and dark circles under her eyes. At this rate, it will be visible to the naked eye from Earth within a week. George Barnes studied the data on his tablet. The quantum signature is changing too. It's becoming more organized. What does that mean? Kelly asked. As head of security, she attended all scientific briefings, though much of the technical discussion went over her head. Kevin rubbed his tired eyes. It means whatever is on the other side is controlling the rift. They're not just coming through, they're deliberately opening a door. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Director Evans finally spoke. Do we have any way to close these rifts? Theoretically, yes, Kevin said. We could reverse the resonator network, try to heal the dimensional tiers, but it would take time, and we don't know if it would work. Start the process, Evans ordered. We need options. In Washington, President Clark convened a special session of Congress. The time for secrets had passed. The world needed to know what they faced. 6 months ago, we were invaded by an alien force called the Draconians, she began her address. Through the courage and ingenuity of our scientists, we developed a defense that removed this threat, but that defense had unintended consequences. She explained in simple terms about the rifts in space and the message they had received. She did not sugarcoat the danger, but she also emphasized humanity's resilience. We survived one threat from beyond our world, she concluded. If necessary, we will survive another. But we must stand united as one human family. Around the world, reactions varied. Some panicked, stockpiling food and supplies. Others fell into religious fervor, seeing the rifts as divine punishment or salvation. Many simply continued their lives, having already faced one apocalypse and survived. In Chicago, Janet Morgan watched the president's address with her son, Ethan. Are more aliens coming, Mom? Ethan asked, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. Janet pulled him close. Maybe. But remember how the last ones disappeared? Our scientists will protect us. Ethan thought about this. I want to be a scientist when I grow up. I want to make bad aliens disappear. Janet smiled sadly. That sounds like a good plan. At the new International Space Station, Frank Howard monitored the largest rift. Through special filters, he could see it now, a shimmering tear in the blackness of space like rippling water where there should be nothing but void. Base, I'm getting new readings, he reported. The rift is pulsing. The pattern matches the message we received earlier. On Earth, all Whisper monitoring stations confirmed his observation. The rift wasn't just growing, it was communicating. Can we respond? Kevin asked Emma. She nodded slowly. We could use the resonators to create our own pulses. It would be basic, but it might work. What would we say? George wondered. Kevin thought for a moment. The truth. That we are a peaceful species who defended ourselves against aggression. That we regret any damage to the dimensional barriers. That we hope for understanding, not conflict. The message was crafted with care and approved by the Global Defense Council. Using the Whisper Resonator Network, they sent quantum pulses through the largest rift, hoping whatever waited on the other side would understand. For 3 days, there was no response. Then, suddenly, all 5 rifts pulsed in perfect synchronization. When the new message was decoded, it contained just 3 words. We are coming. That night, amateur astronomers around the world noticed a change in the largest rift. It had stopped growing and now appeared to be contracting. But rather than closing, it seemed to be condensing, becoming more defined like a doorway taking shape. At dawn, the event happened that would forever change humanity's understanding of the universe. The main rift, now visible as a shimmering, blue oval in the sky, opened fully. From within emerged a single vessel. Unlike the sharp, aggressive lines of the Draconian ships, this craft was smooth and circular, glowing with a soft blue light. It was smaller than the Draconian warships, but still impressive, perhaps the size of a small city. Every weapon system on Earth locked onto the alien vessel, but it made no aggressive moves. It simply took position near the rift and waited. They're sending a signal, Frank reported from the space station. Audio only, using our own radio frequencies. The voice that came through was unlike anything humans had heard before. It seemed to shift between tones and pitches as if multiple voices spoke as one. Yet somehow everyone who heard it understood perfectly. People of Earth, the voice said, we are the Watchers. We monitor the boundaries between dimensions. You have torn the veil. You have disturbed the balance. In the Nevada facility, Kevin Wright felt a cold dread wash over him. His greatest fear was being realized. We did not intend to damage the barriers, President Clark responded. Her voice transmitted up to the space station and then to the alien vessel. We were defending ourselves against an invasion. The Draconians, the voice acknowledged. They were forbidden from entering your realm. They defied our laws. You were right to defend yourselves, but your method has created a greater problem. What kind of problem? The president asked. The barriers between dimensions exist for a reason, the voice explained. There are things in the void that should never cross over, things far worse than Draconians. Kevin and his team exchanged worried glances. The implications were terrifying. What do you want from us? President Clark asked. We require your assistance, the voice responded. The technology you call Whisper opened the rifts. It must help. Close them. We cannot do it alone. Director Evans leaned toward his microphone. Are you saying the rifts could let something else through? Something dangerous? There was a pause before the alien response came. They already have. When you displaced the Draconian fleet, you tore holes in multiple dimensions. The Draconians were sent into the void, but parts of the void were pulled into your dimension. They are small now, hidden, but growing stronger. The revelation sent shockwaves through Whisper Base. They hadn't just removed the Draconians, they had inadvertently allowed something else in. What are these things from the void? Kevin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. You have no word for them, the alien voice replied. They are not life as you understand it. They are not matter as you define it. They are absence given form, hunger given purpose. And they're here, on Earth? George asked, horrified. Yes. Scattered when the rifts first formed, hiding, feeding, growing. If they are not found and removed, they will consume your world from within. Then they will consume all worlds in all dimensions. President Clark's voice remained steady, despite the dire news. How do we find them? How do we stop them? We will help you, the voice said. It is our duty as Watchers, but first the large rifts must be sealed before more can enter. We need access to your Whisper technology. Kevin Wright took a deep breath. The choice was clear. "Tell them we'll cooperate fully," he said to Director Evans. "If these Watchers can help us fix what we've done, we need to work with them." As night fell across the globe, millions looked up at the sky with a mixture of fear and wonder. The alien ship glowed blue against the darkness visible from everywhere on Earth, a reminder that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and that their actions had consequences beyond their understanding. A year had passed since the Draconians vanished, 6 months since the Watchers arrived. Earth had changed in ways few could have imagined before the invasion. The Watcher ship remained in orbit, a constant reminder of humanity's new place in the universe. 3 smaller vessels had joined it, each stationed near one of the remaining rifts. The 5th and smallest rift had been successfully sealed using a combination of whisper technology and the Watcher's advanced knowledge. Kevin Wright had aged visibly in the past year. His hair had turned almost completely gray, and deep lines marked his face. Yet there was a new energy in his movements as he worked alongside the alien scientists. The Watchers had shared knowledge that advanced human understanding of quantum physics by decades, perhaps centuries. "The 4th rift is nearly closed," Emma reported during the morning briefing. She looked healthier now, her former exhaustion replaced by excitement. Working with beings from another dimension had that effect on most of the scientists. "The resonators are performing exactly as predicted." "And the void entities?" Director Evans asked. This was always the most difficult part of these meetings. George Barnes pulled up a global map on the main screen. Red dots marked confirmed locations where the void entities had been detected. "We've contained 23 so far," he said. "The Watcher technology is effective at detecting them, but they're becoming more adept at hiding. The last one in Brazil had completely blended into the local ecosystem." Kevin nodded grimly. "They're adapting, learning. The Watchers warned us this would happen." The void entities, as they came to be called, defied easy description. They weren't truly alive in any way humans understood life. They existed partly in this dimension and partly in others, making them difficult to detect and even harder to contain. They consumed energy in all its forms, electrical, thermal, even the bioelectric fields of living creatures. The first casualties had been in rural areas where power suddenly failed and people vanished without trace. Now specialized teams of human and Watcher personnel tracked and captured the entities using technology that could shift them fully into this dimension, where they could be contained in special quantum fields. In Chicago, Janet Morgan prepared dinner while her son Ethan worked on homework at the kitchen table. Life had finally settled into a new normal for them. The presence of aliens in Earth orbit no longer dominated every news report or conversation. People adapted, as they always did. "Mom, did you know the Watchers have 5 senses we don't have?" Ethan said, looking up from his tablet. "My science teacher says they can see quantum fluctuations directly." Janet smiled. At 12 years old, Ethan had become obsessed with the aliens, like many children his age. "That's interesting. Did she explain what a quantum fluctuation is?" "Kind of. It's like tiny changes in reality that happen all the time." He frowned in concentration. "I think I need to study physics more to really understand it." Janet's phone buzzed with an alert. She checked it and her smile faded. "They've found another void entity. This one's not far from here." Ethan looked worried. "Are we in danger?" "No," Janet assured him, though she wasn't entirely confident. "The containment teams know what they're doing." Across town, Major Kelly Martinez led the containment operation. Her team consisted of 4 human soldiers and 2 Watchers. The aliens looked almost human from a distance, humanoid in shape with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Up close, the differences became apparent. Their skin shimmered with a faint blue luminescence, and their eyes were large, solid orbs that changed color based on their emotional state. "The entity is inside this building," said Leth, the lead Watcher. Its voice had the same multi-toned quality as all Watchers, but Kelly had grown used to it. "It's consuming the electrical systems. Soon it will seek living energy." Kelly nodded and gave silent hand signals to her team. They had done this many times now. Each wore a special suit developed with Watcher technology that masked their bioelectric field, making them essentially invisible to the void entities. The capture went smoothly. The entity, appearing as a shifting shadow that seemed to absorb light rather than block it, was forced into a containment device. It would be transported to a special facility where the Watchers studied them, trying to find a way to return them to their own dimension. Back at Whisper Base, Kevin received a message that made his heart race. The Watchers had made a breakthrough. In their research, they say they can send the void entities back, he told George and Emma. Not just contain them, actually return them to their proper dimension. How? Emma asked, leaning forward eagerly. By reversing the entire process. They want to create a controlled version of what we did to the Draconians, but targeted specifically at the void signature. George looked concerned. Would that mean opening new rifts? Temporarily, yes. But they believe they can close them properly. Afterward, the proposal went to the Global Defense Council, where it was debated for days. The risks were significant, but the alternative, continuing to hunt and contain void entities indefinitely, was worse. Finally, approval was given. The operation was scheduled for the anniversary of the Draconian disappearance. Kevin found this fitting. A year to the day after one mistake, they would try to fix it. President Clark addressed the world once more, explaining what would happen in terms most could understand. People were advised to stay indoors during the operation, though the Watchers assured them it would be safe. The night before, Kevin couldn't sleep. He walked outside the base and looked up at the stars. Among them, he could see the blue glow of the Watcher ships and the faint shimmer of the remaining rifts. Having doubts? George asked, joining him outside. Always, Kevin admitted. A year ago, we thought we were saving the world. Instead, we put it in greater danger. And tomorrow we might fix that mistake. That's how science works, right? Trial and error. Kevin smiled slightly, usually with less cosmic consequences. At dawn, the operation began. All 37 whisper resonators activated simultaneously, using the new programs developed with the Watchers. The quantum field was different this time, more controlled, more precise. It targeted only the specific frequency of the void entities. Across, the world-contained entities suddenly became agitated in their cells. In areas where undetected entities lurked, strange phenomena occurred. Lights flickering, electronics failing, patches of unnatural darkness forming, and then dissipating. In orbit, the Watcher ships positioned themselves around Earth, creating a barrier of energy that helped direct the quantum field. The remaining rifts pulsed with new energy, growing briefly brighter. For 23 minutes, the resonators operated at full power. Then, one by one, they shut down. The quantum field collapsed. The rifts flared one last time, then began to shrink rapidly. Did it work? President Clark asked, watching from the White House Situation Room. No one knew for certain until the Watchers confirmed it. Their sensors detected no void entities remaining on Earth. All had been forced back through the rifts before they closed. The celebration was subdued, tempered by the memory of what had been lost. Millions had died in the Draconian attack and the subsequent void incidents. Cities were still rebuilding. The world had changed forever. 2 days later, the main Watcher ship sent a message. They would be leaving soon, now that the crisis was resolved. But they would not abandon Earth entirely. A small contingent would remain to help humanity prepare for its new role in the wider universe. You have been noticed, the Watcher commander told President Clark in their final official meeting. The Draconians were only one species among many. Some are peaceful, some are not. You will need to be ready. Will you help us? She asked. We will guide you, but your path must be your own. Your species has great potential. Your whisper technology, though flawed, was remarkable. Few emerging species developed dimensional manipulation so early. As the main Watcher ships departed, leaving just one smaller vessel in orbit, humanity looked to the stars with new understanding. They were not alone in the universe or even in the multiverse. They had enemies, but also allies. They had made mistakes, but also shown courage. Kevin Wright watched the ships leave from the roof of Whisper Base. Emma and George stood beside him along with Kelly and many others who had worked to save their world twice over. "What now?" Emma asked softly. Kevin looked at his friends, then back at the stars. "Now we learn. We prepare. And we make sure our next greeting to the universe is less accidental." Above them, the night sky seemed both more wondrous and more dangerous than ever before. Earth's silent fury had echoed across dimensions, and the universe had answered. What would come next was up to humanity to decide.